Hey, gather around, folks. How you doing? This is Israel Keys Barbershop. Now, full disclosure, I'm on holiday with my wife and children, and if the wife catches me working and she counts this as work, I'm done for. So this is going to be quick and sharp. I'm talking about the fight of the month, maybe even the fight of the year, because it's just February. Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury Part 2. Started roughly about 5 a.m. My time where I am right now. Now, I just shot a long 20-minute video and my storage device malfunctioned at the end, and so I lost the last piece of the video, and it doesn't really make sense as it is without the last piece. So I'm going to do this again in 2 or 3 parts. Now, I'm going to talk in this one. I'm going to stick to my unemotional perspective on the fight. I'm going to come back later on when I get my next break from the vacation with the fam to discuss my more nuanced, slightly more sentimental, emotional perspective. Now, full disclosure, I'm a boxing fan, but I'm primarily a heavyweight fan. If you watch my first video on the channel, the first barbershop episode, I talked about the fact that I'm a boxing fan. I follow all the divisions, but I've always had a place in my heart for the heavyweights. I grew up with I grew up watching boxing. I didn't grow up. I became a boxing a super fan. Not that I'm a celebrity or anything. Watching the Tyson, Holyfield, and Lewis era in that order. Tyson ascended first, Holyfield came up right after him, and then Lewis came up and cleaned up the era and was the best of the era. Talking about the Riddick Bowes, the Oliver McCalls, but then I go slightly further back in my watching. That's when I became really an aficionado. And of course, I've watched the reruns of the great fights, the Fraziers, the Ali, the Liston. Well, what clips exist of the Liston fight with Muhammad, and of course you got your Spinks in between, your Spinks, your Holmes, and so your Razor Ruddock. So I know my boxing, and I know my heavyweight boxing in particular. Now, you can't talk about any of the top 3 heavyweights today without talking about the other 2. So we're talking about Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, whatever order you want to put them. Every time you talk about one or two of them, the other one has to come in. When we were talking about the when we were talking about the Joshua Ruiz fight, we also had to, we kept bringing in Fury and Wilder, and so it's only fair we do the reverse here. So now these are so I'm going to throw in AJ here a few times, but I'm going to try and stick to the 2 fighters, and then I'm going to come back and do another video that goes deep into my feelings, my non-objective thoughts on what I've just seen this morning, and then I'll probably wrap it up with a 3rd video. So a couple of things. First of all, if you call yourself a boxing fan, when you watch a fight, if you want to gauge the fight for yourself, if you want to form an unbiased, unsentimental opinion, learn to watch the fight without the commentary on. I repeat, if you see yourself as a boxing aficionado, learn to watch fights with no sound, or at least no commentary. Why? Every broadcaster has an agenda. They either have a fighter they're backing, or they want to see a rematch, and so they're going to try and sway public opinion in the direction of the underdog if they lose, so that they can be a rematch and they can run it back and make more money, because rematches of close, compelling fights where someone feels robbed, or people feel someone was robbed, usually do much better financially the next time. And so close your ears. Just watch the fight again with no sound, and ask yourself, without the commentary I was listening to helping me form an opinion, what do I think of what I just saw? I've watched this fight now 4 times, and the last 2 were 1.5 of the 4 were without sound. And I'm not talking highlights. I mean every second of every round. So these are my thoughts. First of all, let me start off with the one good thing I have to say about Deontay Wilder today. And full disclosure, I have nothing against him as a man. I'm talking about strictly as a fighter. As a human being, seems to be a great guy. Great father. I haven't heard about any criminal activity. He's been married a while. There's no public smoke. We don't know if there's anything in private. There's no public smoke about infidelity or domestic violence. So, as a human being, I'm not going there. This is strictly unsentimental, like I said, as a fighter. And I got one good thing to say about him as a fighter coming out today. He didn't quit. He showed some dog. He didn't quit. He wasn't looking for a way out. His body language was horrible in my opinion, but even with his horrible body language, I believe him when he says he would have carried on. I could see in the horrible body language that he wanted to carry on. That's about it. Now let's get to the real stuff. First of all, I've always known this because I did my research, unlike some of you internet, I don't want to throw any shade today. Some of you internet warriors, I was going to say hillbillies. Where are fighters from? One, and two, where they lived and how they interacted and where they're from tells you a thing or two about them. I'm not claiming to have been a gangster. I was around several gangsters growing up. I know what the streets look like. I wasn't fully a street kid in that I had a decent upbringing that kept me balanced. But I hung out a lot with the people who ran the streets in my neighborhood. Tyson Fury is a traveler. For those of you, the family's coming back. For those of you who don't know what a traveler is, he's a gypsy. He's from a long line of people, in his case with some Irish blood, who have moved around in caravans for a living and many times have had to fight for the right to stay in certain places. It is an honor tradition in the traveling community. From the time a boy can walk and hold his fists up, fighting is seen as an honorable sport. Arguments are settled with fists, they shake hands and they move on. You might agree or disagree with it, that's how they roll. He's been fighting since he was born, technically. Anthony Joshua grew up on the streets of London and then first Watford and then London. Like a Tyson Fury in a different way. And he grew up on the streets. He's been very public about how his life was turned around by boxing, how he was heading down the wrong path, how he had a criminal charge for possession of marijuana. I know people who know him. He's a generation younger or thereabouts, but I know people who know him. Well, not really a generation, but he's significantly younger. And this was a bad boy. Before boxing turned his life around, he wasn't the kind of guy you wanted to be having beef with at night on your own. Deontay Wilder is from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Nothing against Tuscaloosa. His parents are clergymen. I'm a clergyman, full disclosure. Clergyman, full disclosure. I just never bought into the whole gangster hype. Yeah, the clothes and the bronze bomb, but looking at him in the eye from day one, I didn't know if he had that dog in him, the kind of dog I'm about to talk about, not the don't quit dog, but this kind of dog. When I looked at them in the weigh-in and in the ring walk, and then standing in the ring touching gloves, Deontay thought he was going to have his way. Fury knew. You could see in his eyes. There was no showman behind Fury's eyes, and I've seen that in fighters before. I've seen it in people I got in fights with on the streets, where a guy could be the nicest guy, look like a pushover, and then there's a look in a guy's eye that tells you, you may beat me, but you'll kill me before I lay down. I saw it in Fury's eyes. And from the opening bell, now let's give Fury his credit. I don't like everything he does. I prefer AJ as a fighter, but AJ didn't fight last night. This was Fury's fight. Let's come correct. He doesn't mess around. He says what he means. He may not always be able to back it up, but he'll tell you about a fight that he's involved in. He'll mess around and say a few nonsense, but there's always one or two things he says you can tell he's serious. He told Klitschko that he was old and that he wasn't going to be able to deal with him like he would if he was younger. He proved it. In the first fight, he talked about how he was going to dance rings around Wilder. He backed it up. In this fight, he said he was going to, and I believed him. Because I looked in his eyes, like I said, I've been around guys who grew up on the streets, who are about that life. There's a look in their eye that tells you they mean business. And secondly, I knew this was how to beat Wilder. Coming to Wilder in a second. Thirdly, Fury had to beat 6 guys. He had to beat Wilder, each of the 3 judges, the referee, and Hal Heyman/PBC. Kenny Bayless is a decorated championship referee who's been around for a long time, and I have a lot of respect for him. He should be ashamed of himself last night. And this is what Fury meant when he said he could not leave the decision to the judges. From the beginning, Wilder was hitting him with rabid punches, nothing was said. Wilder was punching in the clinch after being told to break, nothing was said. The one time where Fury actually disobeyed an instruction because he was being punched. How do you deduct the point from a guy who just dropped someone? I'm coming to the knockdowns and is going for the knockout while the opponent is trying to spoil and hold. Just beyond. Kenny, and then every time Wilder got hurt, you kept seeing that Kenny was doing his best to buy Wilder time. It was just shameful. I understand the pressures of being the home fighter and the home promotion and all that, but boxing, this is why people prefer the UFC nowadays. Now, fix that. Let's come to the knockdowns. I counted at least three genuine knockdowns. There were the two that counted, and there was one that was waved off. Sorry, I just had my family walking. I tried to tell them I'm recording, and there was one that was waved off. Now, one of them, yes, I could see that one being counted as a slip, even though in my opinion, Wilder was already on his way down when he hit Fury's leg. But there were 3 times. The other one, in my opinion, was shameful. I think the third one was the second one in the second round. That is a knockdown every day of the week and 3 times on Sunday. To everybody talking about the punch, it's not Fury's fault. And I really wish I did this video. I was going to do a video before the fight, but we were traveling on holiday. I didn't have the time. We were in transit and all that, which is crazy. When you break Wilder down, he's very one-dimensional and not just offensively, and I'm coming there. Every time Wilder gets hurt or is afraid of getting hurt, he turns his ear. Go watch. He turns his head, When he's trying to cover up or when he anticipates a power shot coming, he turns and he gives you the side of his head. The punch was literally, and that wasn't the one that broke his eardrum. The one that broke his eardrum was in the 5th round. Go watch. There was a punch he hit him with in the 5th round on the ear, flush on the ear, and you knew at that point, if you know boxing, that the eardrum was perforated. And that's why we only saw the blood from the ear in the corner after the 5th round. So I don't want to hear. And he was beaten, systematically deconstructed for 5 rounds before his equilibrium left with the eardrum. And in my opinion, if Fury had any kind of power of a guy like at least a White or an AJ or any of the other guys, Dylan White I'm talking about, this is okay. Coming to Dylan in a second, he'd have gotten him out in 3 rounds. Also, my heart breaks for Dylan White. Now, like I said, I'm an AJ fan, but when it comes to talking about what happened, I go with what I see. I'm not anybody's fanboy. I call it like I see it. I really feel for Dylan White because Dylan White would have beat Deontay Wilder, in my opinion. Wilder's power is overrated in this respect. Your power is going to carry a lot more when you're fighting someone, 1, you're not nervous about, and 2, who is not on your level, because the real top level fighters do things that take the sting off a punch, 1, defensively, and secondly, if someone is systematically breaking you down, your power is not going to carry as you go through the rounds. That's what happened with AJ against Ruiz. He came in with a concussion, got clipped on the top of his head when he went down in the 3rd round. And because Ruiz stayed on top of him, AJ's power couldn't carry like it usually would have, because he had someone there who, at least that night, based on his physical, him being physically compromised with a concussion and the knockdown that scrambled his senses, he had someone who was on his level. Your power is a lot more. It carries a lot more when you're fighting someone who is not giving you an equal fight. It's both nervous energy, but it's also the physical ability to be fluid. Because power is not generated by weight. It's generated by fluidity, speed, but a rhythm. There's a rhythm to the way you punch when you're relaxed. That is all desperate. That's not there when you're in the middle, when you're being systematically deconstructed. Back to this fight. Back to Dylan White, Dylan, man, my heart goes out to you because this was straight up corruption. Dylan White should have fought this guy at least 2 years ago. Would have beaten him, in my opinion. And based on tonight's performance, we see that when Wilder can't land the right hand, his basics. I went to town in my last video on his basics. His basics are shocking. Not only is he shocking basically or fundamentally, offensively, defensively, he can gauge distance. Boxers gauge distance both defensively and offensively. For those of you who don't know, through the jab. The person jabbing is gauging distance. The person being jabbed can gauge distance by the jab. That's why you see top level fighters, they parry, they shoot the jab, they catch the jab. They're both working out distance. There were several times where before Fury would hit Wilder, from the jab, from 2 jabs before the punch he would hit him with, you could see he was in range. Watching, I'm looking, boy, you're in range, move out of range. But he doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand that you don't lean back when you're being punched. That's the surest way to get hit. Because you can't lean back if your feet are set quicker than the punch can come. There's 3 primary ways you avoid a punch. One is you parry it, or you catch it, or you block it with your fists or your elbows or stuff, your arms. The second way is you move your head. Fury is a master of the head movement, and we saw from AJ against Ruiz that he's become a master of the foot movement. Your feet take you in and out, sideways, in and out. You don't lean back. You will get hit. It's just science, because when you're leaning back, your feet are set. Your momentum is trying to keep you on position. You're trying to move back in the other position. You're not going to be as quick. And also, if you get hit leaning back, you are already off kilter before the punch comes. It will only add to you getting knocked down. The fact that this guy is 34 years old, he's 40-something fights in, and he doesn't know the basics is shocking. And basic fundamentals in boxing are exposed under pressure. You can look good against, like people kept saying, oh, he's a much better fighter. Yes, if you're fighting a 50-year-old Luis Ortiz, who glitched for a second when you knocked him out, or Dominic Brazil, who has no business being called anywhere near world class. If you're fighting those guys, you can try out the stuff you're being taught. But when you're in the fire, that's how I know that Joshua is a much better fighter post Ruiz 2 than before Ruiz 1. Because at the top level, you can't stick to something for 12 rounds on the fire if it hasn't become innate. And Fury took him to school. Completely took him to school. Exposed him. And going back to the whole hard thing, like I said, there's a bit of fighting that is no longer skill, it's will. While I praise Wilder for not looking for a way, not trying to quit, he showed me that he does not. It's okay to have will when you are the bully. From the opening tap, the guy who was supposed to have feather dusters for fists took the center of the ring, pushed him back, and imposed his will. And it wasn't that Wilder didn't get caught. There's 2 ways to get caught, to get beaten against a bigger fighter or somebody holding the center of the ring. The first way is you trade. That's what Chisora did against Fury the second time when he got TKO'd. That's what he did against Dylan White when he thought he was losing after getting the point deducted and he got slept. That's the brave way to get beat up against somebody holding the center of the ring. That's not what Wilder did. He didn't try and stand his ground and get caught. He got walked down trying to run away and got decimated. And he got decimated of jabs. By the 4th round, Wilder was there. By the second round, the round before he got knocked down, the first knockdown, Wilder was there for the taking. He wasn't there any longer. It was just a horror show. And if Fury had done what he did, with the time he did knock him down, which is follow up a jab, 2 or 3 more times, he'd have been out. If I'm Deontay Wilder, what do I do? 2 options. Because now that you've been exposed, your handlers are less likely to be more incentivized in sweetening the pot by corrupting stuff for you. Number 1 is take a year out fighting top level opposition. Just try and work. You're 34, but try and work on your game. Fight the B class fighters, the guys between the 10th and 5th in the world in each ranking. The second way is take the Joshua fight. See if you can get 40% now. This is why when you're on top, don't overplay your hand. You could have had 120 million, 10 million more than you got for Brazil, and then 100 million for 2 fights for AJ. And even though you would have got the same outcome, it would have felt not as bad. But now you played yourself. So you can get 40-45% if AJ's feeling charitable. Get beat again. Take that money, ride off into the sunset, or do what I said, then go away for a year. The second way is if you want to keep your loss column at 1, take a step back and just build on the basics and see where you go. But if you go in there again with Fury, the same thing is going to happen, and this time it's going to be worse. Finally, Fury did what Canelo did against Triple G, what Andre Ward did against Sergey Kovalev. And I wish I'd put out the video that I was trying to make the night before the fight, but I kept having issues being in transit. When you come against a guy who's supposed to be a bully, Kovalev, Triple G, and now Wilder, the first fight you're tentative. But when you get dropped or hit, Canelo got hit, not dropped. Ward got dropped. Fury got dropped twice and got up. When you feel a guy's power and realize you can survive it, then the better fighter makes it more clinical the second time, because then you systematically impose your will, because you know that this guy is just a bully. He doesn't have the will to back up his bully status. Tyson, hats off to you. You came, you saw, you conquered, you called it, you did it. We give you your props. Now make that 50-50 fight with AJ. We want to see who the real undisputed champion is. Peace him out. Take care. Back to the family. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.